Well, we begin here. According to the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, nearly 3,200 children have been killed in the Gaza Strip in just 3 weeks, surpassing the number of children killed annually across the world's conflict zones since 2019. Now, let's discuss this. Toby Fricker, Chief of Communications and Partnerships at UNICEF South Africa, joins us from Jordan. Amman, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It is quite difficult to comprehend that the number of children killed, we're told, in the Gaza Strip in just 3 weeks surpasses the number of children killed annually across the world's conflict zones, since 2019. Just your observation as UNICEF about how this war continues to see children being killed.
Yeah, you're right. The number of children killed is horrific, and the number of children injured is horrific. As the UNICEF Executive Director said yesterday to the UN Security Council, these numbers should really shake us to our core. It's really, really horrific numbers. And this is what happened. We're in a very densely populated area. The Gaza Strip is extremely densely populated. You've had people moving around into shelters in other areas. But whenever you have hostilities in such a densely populated area, children are going to be affected so much. And it's really become, as we said today, it's become a graveyard essentially for children.
Just talk to us about, the situation on the ground in as far as children are concerned. We obviously are seeing so many, reports coming out of Gaza, some children in hospitals, some in obviously very constrained situations, and some, trying to make do of the situation. Talk to us about the impact of this on schooling, as we understand, of course, many schools, over 200 schools are being destroyed, at least to our understanding.
Yeah, that's right. The impact on children is massive. First of all the schools in the Gaza Strip, are shut, and it's a case right now of survival. So we've spoken to our colleagues. Nesma, she has a 4-year-old girl, a 7-year-old girl, and she was telling us about how the stress on the 4-year-old is so intense that she's ripping her hair, she's scratching her thighs. And this what we call sort of toxic stress is really playing out for children inside the Gaza Strip, but also further afield in other parts of the state of Palestine. And then there's also the access to essentials for life, so safe water, sanitation. You have people now living in very densely populated areas. We've had our staff member also talking about how her children are drinking salty water because the desalination plants to provide clean water are not working properly. And so those supplies are at a massive strain, and that's also a massive concern because you could be leading to outbreaks of diseases as well.
And I was going to talk about that because on the one hand, we understand that, children will somehow be killed through, a bombardment. But on the other hand, there is this concern about the sanitation problems and, of course, the poor drinking water that is available to children at this point in time, that in actual fact, they will or might die through disease. Just talk to us about your, teams on the ground. What are some of the situations that they are facing, and where exactly are they in terms of location?
Yeah, so we've had teams in the Gaza Strip for many, many years, based in different parts, and and what we're calling for now really is this humanitarian access, this scaled up, sustained humanitarian access, so we can bring in life-saving supplies. And by that, I mean water purification tablets, medical supplies, hygiene kits that we can then distribute as quickly as possible to shelters where families are trying to seek some form of safety. So you've got children, families living very, very closely together, and obviously at risk of diseases there, but also improving that access to safe water in those areas, and the sanitation facilities is critical now to avoid anything getting further out of hand. But the situation is there, and that's why we keep calling for a massive scale up of humanitarian aid to come in on a regular basis and an everyday basis.
And what are you hearing and what are your teams seeing, particularly on the Rafah border? Because we do understand that, of course, not enough trucks are being allowed in. And of course, there are engagements, at a higher level with the UN Security Council, as well as the General Assembly, pushing and discussing for the humanitarian passages. But we do understand that, of course, not enough aid is coming through. We're hearing conflicting reports, of course, that some trucks trucks are allowed in, but others, particularly those that are carrying fuel, are not allowed in?
Yeah, so aid has been what we could say is, trickling in. So yesterday, for example, UNICEF managed to get 8 trucks ourselves in, which came in with water supplies and medical supplies, hygiene kits. And in total, there are around 26 trucks, I think it was yesterday. So, but since 21st of October, we brought in about 143 trucks, which is nowhere near enough. You need sort of more than 100 on an everyday basis. So there's still a long way to go. And then it's also the dangers of moving those supplies around. While you have the hostilities going on, in this very densely populated area, as I already said, then it's extremely dangerous for our staff, for all staff, to move supplies around. We've already seen the UN Palestine Refugee Agency have lost 63 staff members. Our own staff members have lost family members. So it's extremely dangerous for anyone to move around.
Let's go back now and talk about this impact on children, particularly long-term impact of this conflict on children. Because we have seen many studies that have shown what violence and the upheaval can do in terms of inducing toxic stress in children. Also interfering with their physical and cognitive development and other, mental health problems over, short term and long term. Just in terms of this particular conflict, just talk to us about what this potentially means on a long term basis. We know, of course, children born in the early 2000s particularly have known nothing but war.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the intensity of the hostilities now has a massive impact on the psychological well-being of children. Even before this latest escalation, we know that around 3 in 4 children living in the Gaza Strip needed some form of mental health, psychosocial support, and that was before this current situation. So the needs will be huge. And UNICEF, we work obviously providing psychosocial support, we work on providing mental health support, and that's what we'll need to do as quickly as we can. We've been able to do some form of little small recreation activities in some of the shelters with some children, but it will need a massive input as soon as we can, as soon as the conditions allow. And that's why we keep calling for this immediate humanitarian ceasefire, really to stop the killing of children, because the longer it goes on, the more and more impacted they're going to be, both in the immediate but also in the long term.
Of course, we know that, there were problems within Gaza in terms of even humanitarian aid, just getting into the Strip even before the October 7 attack. One of the concern, of course, is what happens to those children who have lost their parents, who have lost their caregivers. I mean, again, we're watching, from the sidelines as children are being picked up by rescue workers, they're being left at hospitals. What happens to them, and how significant, is the number of children who have been left without caregivers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number of children left without caregivers will be massively significant. It will be huge. And I think, it's a massive concern. But what I would say is, the extended family, culturally play a big role. They will step in, they'll do what they can, but they're also, of course, under huge stress to keep their own children safe. Our staff members have spoken about just trying to protect their own children, let alone then also do a job. So extended families will step in, they'll do whatever they can. But it's certainly something that UNICEF and many others would be working on as soon as the conditions allow, so we can best support children, best find the best care they can. But we always advocate for family members, where possible, to look after children who have lost their parents or their direct caregivers.
Toby, as we wrap up, I mean, as someone who has worked on this region for a number of years, including your team, of course, what are the chances, or how likely is it that we will see some form of ceasefire anytime soon? In terms of your experience, I mean, have you seen anything of this nature where it's going on now for 3 weeks that we have heard no talk or no even inkling that Israel will at least allow for that ceasefire to occur?
Yeah, I mean, every day we hope to stop talking about the killing of children, the maiming of children, but we haven't been able to do that yet. But we keep working, we keep calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, as does the UN Secretary General, as do many others. And when we'll keep doing that, we'll keep advocating for that in the hope that very, very soon that we can get that ceasefire, because way too many children are dying every day. And really, we have to protect children now. It's really, children have nothing to do, as you know, with conflicts, and they're the ones left in this mess, and that's why we need to stop the killing now.
Toby Fricker, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. That, of course, was Toby Fricker, Chief of Communications and Partnerships for UNICEF South Africa, and he was joining us live there from Jordan.